Rocky Mountain Youth Summit. It's a life-changing event, and we're so lucky to be able to be a part of it.
I'm looking forward just to have fun and to learn more about Colorado.
Well, we're going to preserve history of Rocky Mountain National Park.
It's a brown bear, so look for something brown. Looking at the mark right now.
We're so glad you're here at our Youth Summit, and we have now done 18 of these Youth Summits. The National Park Service has so acknowledged nationally the benefit of this program as being the only statewide program in the country that takes young people, treats them like consultants, put them out in a historic place to have them specifically solve issues, and they're listening to you. And other leaders are listening to you.
So everything in the world is connected. It doesn't matter if it's small or big or it doesn't, anything you do has influence on something larger.
The number one is we're really here to celebrate and to plan for Rocky Mountain National Park's 100th anniversary. But we're going to also talk about how we can make the heritage tourism experience better.
We want you to look, listen, and learn, and then share your findings with us on Friday. We care about what you think. You are the future generation.
When I am gone and laid to rest beneath the pine trees, families will come and find peace and hope in this land.
So you all have an adventure the next few days. Cherish those memories and keep them strong with you in the future by sharing them.
Welcome to Rocky Mountain National Park now that you're in the park. And the building that you're in, as Ann mentioned last night, is a very important architectural feature. This building is listed on as a National Historic Landmark. This building was influenced by Frank Lloyd Wright, and if you compare the architecture of this building to the architectural firm's office in Arizona, you would find a striking resemblance. It's a large use of rock, both interior and exterior to the building, as well as a lot of what they call weathering steel or Corten steel on the exterior of the building.
We want people to enjoy the trees, we want people to enjoy the birds that live in the trees, and that includes the insects that live in the trees too. Insects are an important part of this, and we're going to talk a lot about bugs today. And in the case of trees, particularly evergreen species such as the pines, they have bark beetle insect relationships. But what we're looking at is a patch of beetle-killed trees. And it's a great example because, as I talked about, beetle-killed trees, they topple over so quickly, so readily after they're killed.
But what we're really talking about is restoring biodiversity. That's our main purpose. We've got too many elk, and they're maybe more concentrated than they would be, largely due to the lack of wolves and grizzly bears, which we haven't had time to talk about. Also because of the development in the park and the town, which takes up their winter range. So we've got this issue. What do we do about it? On one hand, maybe we do nothing. On the other hand, maybe there are certain things we can do to try to help manage this situation.
If they have old logs of like when the park was first made in 1915 or like before that, what species were there, like maybe if we introduce that exact number of species, we can get the park back to where it was when it started.
Okay.
And that way to kind of preserve it as it was.
So we kind of have to correct, and once the correction's made, then we can let it take its course.
But then the wolves start to like repopulate and they get out of control. Would the citizens and everyone be willing to find a way to manage the wolves?
So think about how attitudes and people's values might change going forward, and how the parks, national parks, can be relevant in that. And then more specifically, maybe how something like elk and vegetation management can be relevant in that context.
I think Dawn took a different way.
It's called an Aboriginal wooden structure, but we call them wickiups for short. How do we preserve this thing? How do we protect it? Because it's so beautiful and it's so perfect.
Just being outdoor and learning about the environment and the way we can all affect it and how they can affect us, and it's just being out here is just so wonderful.
These are oftentimes built in these lodgepole pine forests where you have tall, straight trees and very few branches, and so they would use that as the center pole of the wickiup, and they would just simply lean the sticks against it to create a shelter for them.
Wait, why do you keep up with
It shows you what the life of a tree would be like. That way you can tell like how the trees really affect the habitat, like with the aspen, how the elk eat them, and how they're...
Like people didn't want to bring in the wolves because of like the predators and whatnot. But could you not bring in some other type of animals that could compete with them, like another set of herbivores that would like compete with them?
It goes like, okay, Colorado, not just your average state. Yes, Florida, not just your average city. Boom!
Focusing on the most important problems and challenges that Rocky Mountain National Park and the town of Estes Park are facing, and we are conquering them.
I think the main goal of the Youth Summit is to try to preserve history and make it so instead of it only lasting one day, it lasts a lifetime.
We are saving America.
And Lindsay's coming.
One national park at a time.
Protection is all up to our generation, and by getting us into it and experiencing what's going on, we can really spread it to the rest of the world.
Well, welcome to McGraw Ranch. This is one of the little hidden gems of historic preservation at Rocky Mountain National Park.
Back in the 1800s, John and Irene McGraw came out here. They were staying in Denver in the Brown Palace Museum for their honeymoon. They were from the East Coast. So they had enough time to actually come up here and learn about this area, and they just fell in love with it. They had that 2,500 cattle, and they lived here for about 10 years when John, the husband, passed away. And so at that point, Irene was running the ranch by herself. She had some help from Ruth and Frank, who were her son and son-in-law. And that's when they decided to turn it into a dude ranch. And it was cool, they had this phrase, roughing it with ease. is what they call the Dude Ranch. So you kind of feel like you're out here, but they had certain privileges.
Why is it significant, and does it retain integrity? And so those are the two questions you guys need to answer to determine if this property is eligible. It is actually listed. It was listed in '98, but why would you think it is eligible?
The evolution of not only ranches, but like how the enjoyment of people, like for like going to ranches and wanting to experience Western life, but also kind of like shows like the architecture and like kind of like the design of like how people used to live and what it was like.
Well, this one might be more important because of the architecture and how it's been built on, or how you can clearly see where it is and how it worked.
It's who we are. I mean, it creates us as a society. It's where our society it began here, and this is what Colorado is made of. This is the foundations of if you were born here, this is the foundation of your soul. This is your heritage.
So there's scattered bits and pieces of historic properties around the park that represent this era, but only here in a Holsworth Historic Site on the other side do we have sort of the full story.
We're staining this wall to help restore the natural beauty and to help protect it from the weather.
This whole place, this Estes Park in general, is just a really big historic landmark. It's important to give back to him as much as possible.
Right now, by stating this, and even though it may be a small thing, we're probably making a big impact. Pretty good. It feels good to serve the community.
I just really care about history, and I care about like the future and being able to preserve it so that the next generations can see what it was like.
I think the preservation of history is extremely important because history is our stories, and if we don't preserve our stories, we'll never be able to learn from them.
We should take initiative to preserve like Colorado because it's a part of us and it's a part of our pride as well. And I just feel like it's all about like knowing how things connect to each other.
One of the things about Estes Park is that many of us came here for our vacation, then we move here, and we want things to remain the way that they were when we first saw the town. But there's preservation from a sustainability standpoint too, in terms of those things that we have to do so that people will be able to live here during the changing times that we face, both globally and nationally.
We're going around Estes Park and asking business owners how their business is doing.
Do you just work in the summer, or? Yeah. Then where do you live? Actually, like Michigan. What seasons are you open?
Summer. 4 hours, switched to about.
I was wondering like how long you lived here or here.
Okay. Well, we live here in Estes Park, and we opened up the shop in the gallery about 2.5 months ago.
We're at the Stanley.
We also get reports of people saying they heard footsteps on the 5th floor. Now we can't go up to the 5th floor today because they're having an event up there. I'm just kidding. We don't have a 5th floor.
No 5th floor.
This is the hallway where people who stay overnight will hear children running up and down the hallways at night, playing with bouncy balls.
Both intelligent hauntings, like Mrs. Wilson, the gentleman in 401. We have a couple of boys over on the 4th floor that like to run up and down and do practical jokes. have on your sweater or something.
I'm really hoping that a ghost does something to me right now so we can get it on film. Then I can be a YouTube sensation like Justin
have
Bieber.
another tour coming through here.
Thank you very much for being here this morning for the town hall that's concluding our youth summit. Each one of our study themes had 6 or 7 questions underneath them. And every night these kids, after different exercises, would go through these and come up with some different answers. And the themes were celebrating Rocky Mountain National Park's 100th anniversary, enhancing the heritage tourism experience, saving historic places that matter, and understanding environmental and wildlife impacts on the historic landscape. What should be the key themes for the centennial celebration?
Hi, my name is Emily Smith, and I'm a student at Thornton High School. And some of the key themes that our group came up with were Native culture and incorporating how the Ute lived and in this region, and balance, the balance between humans and nature. During this week, we learned about Ute Indians and how they have temporary homes called wickyups. So we would incorporate the wickyups into park areas around, say, Denver, Aurora, just suburbs, and have families who are super curious. It's spontaneous, you know, and so everyone gets involved in activity which will promote bigger activities in Rocky Mountain National Park.
Another idea proposed would be creating a Rocky mascot, like, for example, Stanley the Elk. This mascot could be named Stanley after the Stanley family, who had such a large impact on the Estes Park area. Stanley the Elk would say the slogan, "Keeping it natural," since 1915.
In Denver, we have a Paint Denver thing. It's where one day people just go around and paint over all the graffiti that is all downtown to kind of clean up what it looks like and make it look better. So if we could have like a Paint Estes kind of thing where one day we just have a bunch of people come up and, you know, stain the draw like we did yesterday, or just whatever kind of needs to be done.
The beauty of the place brings the people together. That's kind of why it's a park, is because it's so beautiful. It's such a nice place. And, you know, possible themes of why it matters could be like, if you want to come for the scenery, but stay for the stories. You know, you get people in for the...
A theme that we came up with was a new way to experience a wonderful place. And it's based off of the idea that the human perspective has changed over time. It's humans that shape the park. The park doesn't shape the humans, and they're the reason why we changed the park for their enjoyment. And no matter the generation, we're all just seeking the beauty of the park.
And I was thinking in this whole process that you are bridge keepers. You are the bridge between what has been and what has to be.
Rocky Mountain 100!